I welcome all of you to the Institute for Spirituality and Health. I'm John Graham, and we're honored to have you here. I just want to tell you briefly our mission, and that is to increase awareness of the role that spirituality plays in healing. And it does play a great role. Y'all probably all know that. You guys are spiritually attuned, and I'm sure you know that. Well, we have a blessed evening tonight, and Stuart Nelson, who is director of our programming here, has done a great job in pulling this together, and our three great speakers he will introduce. I know all of us will leave blessed, and so prepare your hearts right now to be open and to receive, and I'm excited myself, so come up, Stuart, and say your words to us. He has some things he wants to say to us.
Good evening, everyone. How are you all? Good. Let me just point out, in events past we've had here, it's always loud and buzzing beforehand. But get the meditators in here, and we have just a very peaceful, tranquil room before the program. It was noticeable. We all commented. I'm really happy to see you all here. This is a great turnout. You can feel the energy in the room, and I'm thrilled that all of you decided to come, and we hope that you enjoy this evening and come back in the future. So with that, I guess I'll introduce Uncle Lex Gillen. Uncle Lex has been a practitioner of yoga and meditation for 40 years. He studied with world-class teachers since the 60s. Mr. Gillen has been a full-time instructor since 1974 when he founded the Yoga Institute here in Houston, and that institute is one of the oldest yoga studio businesses in the country. He's taught more than 25,000 yoga classes, 175 10-day retreats, and 300 meditation workshops. Mr. Gillen now teaches at the yoga teacher training and the national certification course here at the Institute and in Santa Fe, and is on the faculty at the Institute for Spirituality and Health. He's a very important part of our team here, and we're blessed to have him. So can we all give a hand and a welcome to Lex.
Oh my God, I have a hole in my sock. I was sure I did not have holy socks on today. Okay, so thank you for coming. Thank you for being timely. So of the group, how many are ongoing meditation practitioners with a daily practice? So those of you that know very little, if anything, about meditation, first-timers? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll get into it. Generally speaking, there are two basic types of meditation, two kinds. One is called a guided visualization, and the other is called a concentration technique. So what I'm referring to is any specific technique of meditation, regardless of the lineage that it comes from. Mystic Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, all the isms, Taoism, Sufism, will be one of those two types. In a guided visualization practice, the focal point that you concentrate on changes through the meditation. In a concentration technique, the focal point that you focus on is unchanging. So an example of a guided practice would be a prayer in the Western Christian tradition. An example of a concentration technique would be using a mantra. We take the same sound and just repeat it over and again. Both techniques work. Both are good. The guided visualizations focus more on opening the heart center, and the concentration techniques focus on cultivating one-pointedness of mind, laser-type concentration. So if you're right brain oriented, and you're into things like music, art, writing, anything creative, you'll be intuitively drawn toward a guided visualization practice. Conversely, if you're left brain oriented, and you're into things like mathematics, logistics, science, you could intuitively be drawn more toward a concentration technique. When we meditate, three things happen. Number one, the mind quiets. As the mind quiets, concentration deepens. Number two, and as concentration deepens, we begin to hear clearly the message of the heart. So at the end of the day, meditation really becomes a practice of listening. Having said that, you can't hear the message of the heart with a monkey mind. So all meditation techniques come back to this focal point of concentration to help quiet the monkey mind. So we're called human beings, but rarely are we being human because we're so busy doing other things other than being. So we should really be called human doings instead of human beings. When you meditate and as the mind quiets, the thought process slows down. And the analogy I use is if you look at an army of ants from standing up, and what appears to be one unbroken line of ants, if you get down on your knees and look at the ants, what you see is one ant in a little bitty space and another ant. So those ants are your thoughts. When you meditate, as the ants slow down, you begin dropping into the little space between the ants. And this is when we have these epiphanies, the ahas. So the ahas happen between the ants. In the yoga tradition, there's a series of steps that we go through to help cultivate that awareness. So, in the historic teachings of yoga in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he laid out basically 8 broad steps that you work through. So I'll just take you through these very quickly. So they're called the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga, the 8 limbs of Patanjali. So limb number 1 and 2. Limb 1 is called the yamas, which are the abstinences, and there are 5 yamas, and these are things that you don't do, things like non-lying, non-stealing, and so on. Then you have the niyamas, which are the observances. So these are things that you do. So these basically make up what I call the 10 Commandments of yoga. These are moral purification. So you really begin first getting your moral life in order. Once you work on that and once you begin cleansing yourself internally, you go into limb number 3, which is called asana, or yoga postures. So the third step includes the whole body of hatha yoga. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of yoga postures where you condition your body so your body doesn't scream at you when you meditate. Limb number 4 is called pranayama. So pranayama means controlled breath. So after you stretch, you sit down in a formal seated position, and you do controlled breathing practices. And there are myriad counts and ratios and techniques. But there's a definite relationship between the rate of one's breath and the state of one's mind. So this is why breath control is so important in quieting the mind. If you're hyper and wired and upset, you'll often find that your breathing is erratic and uneven. Conversely, when you're calm and concentrated, the breath becomes almost non-existent, very shallow and quiet. Limb number 5 is called pratyahara. So pratyahara, you're sitting, you do the controlled breathing, you close your eyes, you turn your awareness inward, and you focus more on what's going on here and here rather than externally. So it's a shift from external awareness to inner awareness. Limb number 6 is called dharana. Dharana is concentration. So this is where you pick a specific technique that you're going to meditate on. So whatever wisdom tradition you're comfortable with, this is a method that you would use, whether it's a prayer, concentrating on the breath, any point of concentration. Limb number 7 is called dhyana. Dhyana is the actual practice of meditation. This is the running off process of your mind. So when you meditate, the mind doesn't really shut off, it just slows down. So as the mind drifts, you come back to step number 6, which is concentration. The mind drifts and you come back to 6. The mind drifts and you come back. The mind will drift 1,000 times, but 1,001 times you come back. And then limb number 8 is called samadhi, which is the final state of pure consciousness. As you sit and meditate, 3 things generally pull you away from that point of concentration. Number 1, the sounds that you hear. The sound of my voice, the sound of the air conditioner, sounds inside or outside the meditation space. Number 2, sensations in your body. You're sitting on the floor and suddenly your leg feels like a piece of wood and it's dead to the world. So you're focused on that. And the third thing it gravitates toward are these myriad thoughts that drift through your consciousness. So as you sit and you're focused on your point of concentration, sensations in the body, sounds that you hear, and other thoughts drifting through the mind. So it doesn't really matter what technique you use. You really honestly need to kick a few tires and just kind of see what works for you. And it's just really a process of elimination of practice and practice and more practice. Now, having said that, you do need to give each technique, whatever technique you're going to be working toward, time to work. So it's really unwise to shift continuously. Just choose a practice, stick with it for a while, and be fairly consistent with it. So if you look at your handout, does everybody have a handout? Anybody not have a handout? That's an old one. No, there's a box of them back here. I don't have one. He's got it. So what you have here may be a dozen different practices drawn from the different traditions. And on page 1, this is called a meta-meditation, blessing of loving kindness. And there are myriad iterations on this one specific practice. So classically speaking, you generally do this first. You say this aloud, you articulate it. And it takes maybe a couple of minutes to go through this. So those of you that have done my little training, how many people have been through the metta practice? A good many of you. So you know who did this, right? Huh? Who? No, Kathy. Kathy is here. So this is Kathy's iteration, Kathy Nunnally. So again, you actually say it. So you bless yourself first. Then you bless, if you go down to the 4th paragraph, you bless all of your family members. So you actually articulate their names and you go through the entire blessing. From there, you bless your teachers. You bless all of your friends. You bless your enemies. And then you bless all sentient beings. Seen and unseen, born and to be born. So no one is eliminated. Everyone is included. So turn the page. The monkey mind meditation. This is generally the first practice that I take people through, and it's very simple. You do your little breathing practices, and I would recommend this. If you meditate for 10 minutes a day, if you'll take 5 minutes and do controlled, slow breathing, some yoga breathing, some abdominal diaphragmatic breathing, and then you meditate for 5 minutes, you'll have a deeper meditation than if you don't do the breathing beforehand. Because again, the breath has that connection to the state of your mind and the rate of your thoughts. So what you do on this is you simply close your eyes and you allow the breath to assume the natural tide in the body. It's natural tide in the body. And on each in-breath, you think the word rising, or breathing in, or Om. And then on each out-breath, you count back starting at 100. So it's like Om. You don't say it, you think it. 100. Om, 99, and so on. And when you forget your number, you start again at 100. So you're at number 72, and then suddenly you're in Chicago. And you don't have a clue where you are. Really, if you get out of the 90s, you're doing pretty good. Turn the page. Vipassana Insight Meditation. So this is out of the Theravada Buddhist lineage, and it's very ubiquitous. John Kabat-Zinn up at UMass has made this world famous just through all of his wonderful work. And this is very similar to the monkey mind meditation. The only difference is it's thinking rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. And every time your mind drifts, you come back to rising and falling. So each time with a relaxed in-breath, you think rising, with a relaxed out-breath, falling. Turn the page again. Noting and labeling. So this is kind of the next step in the Vipassana practice, where rather than rising, falling, everything you're aware of, you mentally repeat twice. So you begin with rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath, and then if you hear a sound, you think, hearing. If you're drawn toward a sensation in your body, it's feeling. If you're bored with the entire process, it's boring. If you become aware of some closed-eye vision that passes in front of you and you're suddenly watching the movies of your mind, seeing. And this becomes a continual stream of consciousness. It's a moment, it cultivates moment-to-moment awareness of whatever it is that's in front of you at the moment. Turn the page. Meditation on pain. I don't know what to say about this because it's exactly what it says, and this is like a 2-page description. Let's play make-believe. Let's say we're going to sit for 60 minutes. And so we're all going to sit on the floor, and you're going to sit cross-legged. And as you sit for like 3 minutes, you're fine, and then suddenly after about 3 minutes, you feel a sensation in your body. But the instructions are, if you move in 60 minutes, just get up and go home. Because I don't have time to deal with you if you're not disciplined enough to sit 60 minutes with no movement. So 60 minutes with no movement, perfectly still. So 9 more minutes go by and little beads of sweat start forming in your forehead and you start shaking and vibrating and suddenly your leg is like a piece of wood. And you're totally drawn into that sensation. The first, other than pain, what is it you're going to feel? Your leg is painful, but the next thing you feel is anger toward Uncle Lex, because I'm the one forcing you to sit here with no movement. So what you do is you first give up the anger. You go through the mental process of releasing the anger and giving it to someone who's not attached to your anger. Give it to God, give it to your mother, whoever. Then you go back to the pain. So there are 5 little steps you go through in your mind dealing with the pain. Number 1, you locate the pain in your body, in your mind. Where is it? It's in my leg. Number 2, notice whether the pain is stationary or does it shift from one part of your body to another. Number 3, notice if it shifts, how does it shift through your body? Is it liquid or is it solid? Number 4, notice if there's any specific color affiliated with the pain. Some people see color, some don't. And number 5, notice whether it's hot or cold. So you go through that little, I'm blowing through these. I mean, that takes you maybe 20 minutes to go through that one little practice. But if you're someone who does experience pain, it's a good practice to work with. Turn the page again. This is called the Waves of the Mind meditation. So you sit. Any sound, any sensation, any thought. I keep going back to those 3. All those do is they just simply create a little ripple in the mind. That's all it is. So you don't get wigged out if you hear the metro line out here. I mean, there's an old Zen saying, you can't kill all the birds outside to have silence. So sound, sensations, thoughts, all 3 just create a little ripple. And then you go back to rising and falling. So rather than counting, rather than rising, falling, just see it as a ripple. Turn the page again. Mantra meditation. So there are myriad mantras to be worked with. This is a mantra that Ram Dass taught me many years ago. It's Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasum Gate, Bodhi Swaha. It's called an expansion mantra where you expand out. Translation is gone, gone, beyond, beyond the beyond to the homage. And classically, you do these integrated into your breathing, and then you actually chant it aloud. Some are melodic, others are just kind of droned out in a monotone. This is a droning, what I call a droning mantra. You don't really, you can sing it, but oftentimes it's just droned and you repeat it and then it becomes subvocal and then you eventually just end up doing it in your mind quietly without articulation. So mantras are really most effective and done with large groups of people over an extended period of time. Turn the page again, expansion guided visualization. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You can actually take this. These are scripted out for you, so you can actually put them in front of you and just give yourself a heads up and guide yourself through this. So this is where you visualize a little tiny being inside of you sitting cross-legged in your heart center, and it's like an ethereal being. It's made of pure love, pure wisdom, pure light. It's not a skin and bones being. And then you let this being expand and fill your body to where your body simply becomes the skin covering their body. And then you expand out to where your head is over the roof of the building, your body is kind of floating in outer space, and then the whole city of Houston is in you. Then you expand out again until your head is in the heavens and your body is floating amongst all of the planets. And then suddenly planet Earth, the whole planet is in your belly. And then you keep expanding until you dissolve into the formless. And there's no inside, there's no outside, there's only light and space. And then once you go out, you have to come back. Turn the page. So what we're going through in about 15 minutes, really it's about a year's worth of teachings. So you do each one of these for a number of weeks. Conscious eating, wow, just read the 4 pages. Movement and stillness, I love this meditation. This is where you're sitting. And let's say we're all sitting on the floor. You're just sitting in a chair. And I know, Bob and Ann, you're going to take people, I assume, through a practice. Yes. And everybody is sitting perfectly still. And that's external stillness. And you turn your awareness inward. And if you were to look at a room full of people meditating, they seem to be perfectly still. But you know what? The breath is moving through the body. You have the movement of the diaphragm. You have the beating of your heart. It's movement. You have the blood as it pulsates through your body. That's movement. You have movement of all of these organs inside of you. And what appears to be a room full of still people. You have all, and then mainly you have the movement of your mind. Oh my God. The monkey mind that never shuts off. So you have all of this movement happening in stillness. So this is called movement within stillness. External stillness, internal movement. There's always something going on inside your body. Turn the page. Prayer of Jesus. I love this little mantra. It's for those Christians. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. You can take it down to Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy. You can take it down to 3 words. Christ, have mercy. You can take it down to 1 word. Mercy. So I have 8 minutes left. So why don't we do this? Why don't we come to sitting and just have your, if you're in a chair, just have your feet flat on the floor. So we'll do maybe a couple of minutes of breathing. So I'll do this count. We're going to breathe into a count of 6. And as we do this breathing, if you'll do some diaphragmatic, deep belly breathing. We'll hold the breath to a count of 3, and then we'll breathe out to a count of 6. So we'll do that for a couple of minutes, and then I'll take you through this little practice for a few more minutes. So as you sit, your posture is important. So lift your waist up out of your hips, bring the rib cage up out of the waist, and have your head straight away. Close the mouth. Close the eyes. So exhale, breathe out and empty completely. Into a count of 6. Hold. Out. Breathe in. Hold. Exhale. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. Last one. Hold. Out. Now just let the eyes be soft. And as you soften the eyes, feel the eyes tilt up. Kind of roll back ever so slightly in your head. Shoulders are loose. And let your belly be soft and easy. So you have an easy, full belly. A soft belly. Just allow the breath to assume its natural tide in the body, allowing each in-breath and each out-breath to come and go on its own. And with each in-breath, think the word rising. With each out-breath, falling. So at the end of the day, really, meditation is simply about remembering to come back to the point of concentration, regardless of what that point may be. It's a practice of remembering. Remembering to be present, clear, aware, awake, open mind, open heart. Thanks for coming. Woody Allen says 80% of life is just showing up. So just like you showed up, just begin a daily practice.
Thank you so much, Lex, for that general overview of meditation and giving us this packet of tools that we can take home with us. I hope you all learned something. The Gethsemane Trappist Monastery, at the time home to Trappist monk Thomas Merton, inspired our next speaker, Bob Hesse, during his 6 years of studying for the priesthood. Dr. Hesse has had many credentials, including being co-founder and president of the Contemplative Network, Incorporated, dedicated to interdenominational Christian contemplative prayer. Dr. Hesse is a vice chairman and faculty member of the Institute for Spirituality and Health, and an instructor at Rice University and the University of St. Thomas, where he just concluded a course on science and religion. Is that correct? Faith and science. He's a valuable member of the ISH community, and we're happy to have him here today. And after that general overview, we're going to dive into a couple of specific traditions. So think about how they're similar and different, and enjoy. Please welcome Dr. Bob Hesse.
Yeah. Well, after hearing how many people Lex taught, I was thinking of him more as not a uncle, but more of a great-great-great-grandfather. I told the guest master I'd like to become a monk. What kind of monk, he asked. A real monk? Yes, I said. He poured me a cup of wine. Here, take this. No sooner that I drunk it than I became aware of a crystal globe forming around me. It began to expand until finally it surrounded him too. This monk, who a minute before had seemed so commonplace, now took on an astonishing beauty. I was struck dumb. After a bit, the thought came to me, maybe I should tell him how beautiful he is. Perhaps he doesn't even know. But I really was dumb. That wine had burned out my tongue. But so great was my happiness at the sight of such beauty that I thought it was well worth the price of my tongue. When he made me a sign to leave, I turned away, confident that the memory of that beauty would be a joy forever. But what was my surprise when I found that with each person I met, it was the same. As soon as he would pass unwittingly into my crystal globe, I could see his beauty too. and I knew it was real. Is this what it means to be a real monk? To see the beauty in others and to be silent? I knew monk Theophane, who wrote this. He's passed away since. It's the Tales of a Magic Monastery. It's a wonderful book. And unlike some of his other Trappist monks, this is the only one he wrote. We're going to talk about the Christian tradition of this prayer practice. And I want to, that's 30 minutes, right? Okay. We'll talk about 30, right? 6:40. 40 minutes, okay. No, boy. 6:40. 6:40, okay. Okay. This means I can't be long-winded. I'm going to have to be silent. The Christian tradition obviously stems from Christ's teaching, and when Christ was asked, how do you pray? In Matthew 6:6, what he said was not the Our Father first. What he said was, go to your inner room, close the door, and pray to your heavenly Father in secret, and he will hear you in secret. Do not be like the pagans who use many words. And only then did he say the Our Father. And the Christian tradition latched onto this, and in the 4th century, the desert fathers and mothers, in their Aramaic, Abbas and Amas, went into the desert in Egypt and tried to understand how to live the way Jesus taught. And fortunately, there was a journalist present. And the journalist's name was Cassian, Saint Cassian, and he wrote the Conferences, which was basically the longest work in Christian antiquity, written in Latin, only very recently translated into English. And Conferences 9 and 10 were about prayer. And basically what he did is he went around to the monks and the nuns and asked how they were doing and what they were doing. And in Conferences 9 and 10, they talked about a word. In the Christian tradition, word with a capital W is God. But they were talking about, give me a word. And Cassian was a contemporary of Benedict. And so Benedict actually lived a little bit later. Benedict was young when Cassian was there. And Benedict took what he wrote and built it into the Rule of Benedict, which became the guidelines for all the monasteries and convents in the world. And there have been mystics ever since. And the term mystics comes from the fact that the church was not sure what these people were doing in these monasteries. They were praying in a strange way. And they thought, we have no idea what they're doing. It's okay, keep doing it, but don't tell those dumb lay people about this. Okay. And it was a mystery to the church, and so they called the people who practiced this mystics, which is synonymous with contemplatives. And the term contemplative is pretty much accepted across all faith traditions. And it's a concentrative form of prayer that Lex referred to, the second form. And in the Christian tradition, there's been a long tradition of the first form, guided meditation, visualizing yourself being with Christ and feeling the sand come between your toes. This is a classic Jesuit spirituality. But I am more enamored to the Trappists because they don't waste any time. They get to it. And so ultimately, it comes down to what is prayer? I mean, we have to ask ourselves that simple question. Is it talking? Is it thinking? Is it listening? And there have been definitions all over the map. If you read the holy people of Christianity, everybody had a slightly different definition. But ultimately, it's relationship with God. And in any relationship, it's going to be rocky, it's going to be easy, it's going to be loving, it's going to be angry. That's the way relationships are. But it's a deepening of a relationship. And in human terms, an analogous discussion would help describe how that relationship builds. If you just meet someone, and I just met a number of you, I went up and introduced myself. The first thing is, my name is Bob Hesse, what is your name? And in that initial discussion, it's an introduction, basically, what you're about. And if we had a little bit more time, I'd find out that you might be interested in meditation, I think. That's why you're here, right? But that's kind of like reading the Gospels for the first time and saying, who is this guy, Jesus, you know? The second level would be more, that's more of acquaintanceship. The second level is more friendliness, where you start to enjoy meditating together, or you enjoy playing tennis together. And the third level is, and that second level is more analogous to pretty much reading, enjoying, seeing what Jesus enjoyed. He enjoyed to eat, so you're eating and you're enjoying the things together if you were with him, say. The third is friendship, where you say, I know you might be in trouble. I've met you, and I know that you might have an illness, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I will, and it's mutual. And we all have experienced that as human beings. And this is really the prayer level that most of us get to. The way to remember it is ACTS. It's the adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, or supplication. Basically, we're doing all the talking. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the level that most people reach, and most people don't go much further than that. The fourth level in the human relationship, and usually I have a volunteer for this, but we're faking our way here a little bit, okay, is you know somebody so well. You know what hurts, what doesn't hurt, and you don't need to say anything. All you do is hug each other. That's what we're seeking in this prayer, this relationship with God. We're seeking that divine hug. And in any hug, it takes two people to hug. You can go out like this, but unless the other person is ready, that's not going to happen. But we're not in control of that other person. We're strictly here to put our arms out for the divine hug. And so the question is, how do we do it? Now, there have been books on this subject. One of them is Open Mind, Open Heart by Father Thomas Keating, and there are books in the back if you want to get those, with a DVD of this, kind of a summary of this class we just got done teaching on convergence of science and religion. This is the original one. Lex, being the great-great-great-grandfather, actually was at the first retreat with Keating on this subject. Keating is the heir apparent to Merton. Merton never really talked about a methodology, but Keating nailed it. And it's basically a learning process that was learned from other traditions, but historically grounded in Christian tradition and the conferences and the Rule of Benedict, etc. So there's a very solid traditional foundation and a theological foundation. And basically what it is we're building this relationship with the Holy Spirit that dwells within us. And we're seeking to embrace that Holy Spirit within us. Now, I'm a Catholic deacon. I wear this with liturgies, but it's a monastic cut. That's why it has a hood to go to the inner room and long sleeves to hide your hands and to be quiet. But this dance with the Holy Spirit is something that we can't force. We can only be present. and open ourselves up. And there are over 40,000 Christian denominations. I obviously can't speak for all of them. And once we enter this silence, there's no dogma. So I've taught this to the Baptist, the Episcopal, the Quaker, the Orthodox, Catholic, a whole series of different Christian churches, and the Vineyard Church, the non-denominational, because in that silence there's no dogma. But in terms of understanding this, I can say that in my tradition we believe that the Holy Spirit dwells within everyone regardless of their faith belief, and that everyone can go to heaven regardless of whether they're Catholic, Christian, or even theist. So we're not out there to try to convince everybody of our way. That is not the issue. But I say this because once we've done the dance with the Spirit within, and we recognize that indwelling God, then almost spontaneously we dance with the Spirit in others. As Monk Theophane said, the crystal ball embraces everyone. And so it becomes much easier to be loving and good because it's not something we have to think about as much. Okay? Now I realize this sounds a little strange, but once we practice this, and we'll practice it for 15 minutes, here's the method. It's very simple, but profound. First, I'd like for everybody to sit up straight with your feet flat on the ground, and those who are sitting in the lotus position, wonderful. I wouldn't try it myself. I don't think I could get up. Okay. Put your hands on your knees, and as I explain the method, close your eyes. Now you're going to pick a sacred word or an image, which is going to be a symbol of your desire to be with God. Make it one syllable, preferably no more, maybe two at the most. Have it be a word that doesn't generate thoughts on its own. It might be God, but that might generate a lot of thoughts. It may be peace, spirit, Abba, Amma. And once you've selected your word, that is going to be a symbol of your desire to be with God. And as Lex said, the monkey mind is going to generate many thoughts. The key to this is to remember that we are not our thoughts. We are more than our thoughts. So every time, and this is absolutely the heart of the prayer, so listen up. Every time we become aware of our thoughts, or become aware that we're engaged in our thoughts, we gently, ever so gently, return to the sacred word and gently let go of those thoughts and return. Now, you may have 1,000 thoughts. That is not a measurement of whether you did a good job on this prayer. Whether you have 1 or 1,000, every time you become aware of your thoughts or become aware that you're engaged with them, you return ever so gently to your sacred word. The thoughts could be many things. The thoughts could be, did I turn the lights out? Or I picked the wrong word? Or I hear that clock? Or someone coughed? All of those are treated as something that we gently let go and return to our sacred word. The profoundness of this practice is that we are saying that we are letting go of our most profound and most cherished possession, our thoughts. We are letting go and letting God by letting go of our most profound possession. And we're doing it gently, and we're not going to be hard on ourselves. I take it you all have your sacred word or image. I'm going to start with a psalm phrase, and I'll first hit the gong once, and then I'll do the psalm, and then I'll hit the gong 2 more times. And at the end, I will hit it 3 times at the end of 15 minutes. And then I will say the Our Father in the Christian tradition, but do not say it with me. And by the way, the sacred word or image, you do not say that. You just think back on it. And when you hear me say the Our Father, get the sense of the pace. Because once we've gone deep into this prayer, which takes practice, 20 minutes a day, twice a day, then it becomes easier each time. If someone would dim the lights, please. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Father, who are in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bob. Anne Klein, founding director and resident teacher at Dawn Mountain, has practiced, studied, and translated extensively in 3 of the 5 Tibetan traditions. She's professor of religious studies at Rice University in Houston, Texas, here, and the author of 4 books and numerous articles. Dr. Klein has been a practicing Buddhist and a student of Buddhist thought since 1971. Dr. Klein earned her master's in Buddhist studies from the University of Wisconsin and her PhD in religious and Tibetan studies from the University of Virginia. In her Dharma teachings, she emphasizes the need for embodiment in meditation practice and for an awareness that encompasses cultural as well as personal insights. She has since 1998 been developing and leading Buddhism and the Body workshops with Phyllis Pei. These have been offered in Berkeley, Houston, the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, and Arizona. Anne is married to Harvey Aronson, and they have been traveling the path together since 1970. Let me say thank you again to Bob, and if you could all give a very warm welcome to Dr. Klein.
Yeah, felt nice just to sit in silence a bit after that very rich presentation. It's very interesting. Do you agree that it felt good to sit in silence for a bit? It's very interesting that that is the case, is it not? We have such profound teachings in various traditions that all of us have the Holy Spirit, for example, that the Holy Spirit is in everyone, as Father Hesse just said. Language in Buddhism is that everyone has Buddha nature. In other words, everyone, many traditions have ways of saying that everyone has some profound capacity and quality and potential, which becomes a little bit more evident if we just let ourselves be for a bit, because it's there. It's like the ocean stirred by the wind, but if the wind dies down, the ocean will just become a place of shining and restful, gentle undulation, because that's really its nature. It's just something else that tends to disturb it, and it is easily disturbed. So we too are, I think we all know this about ourselves, we're easily disturbed. And yet, one of the teachings of a meditative practice is that those disturbances are not all that we are. That's a very profound thing to learn. And we've heard different descriptions this evening about the value and importance of being able to let go. Let go a little bit. But it's hard to let go, isn't it? We have all these things we want to think about. We want to go on Facebook, dare I say. The mind enjoys, what the mind likes to do is spin and devour information and objects, and the mind just likes that. Perhaps you've noticed this. And what it takes to bring us to our cushion or our meditative seat, to our practice on a daily basis, is ultimately some kind of deep love for what we really are, the ocean of our being beneath the waves. Not really beneath, because the waves aren't actually any different from the ocean, but somehow when we get all excited about certain waves, we forget the ocean of what we are. So I want to say a little something about the importance of love in our practice. It really underlies and motivates everything. Oh. So this person assumes that whoever hears this message has enough love for their possession, their car, right, that they're going to sit up and get up from whatever they're doing and respond. So this responsiveness to what we love, to what calls us, of course operates at many levels in our lives. And in the spiritual case, you want me to stop? I'll stop. Good luck. Okay. Now that's interesting. Somehow I assumed that that speaker was talking to somebody else, not us. It's another kind of assumption that one tends to make. But this information, really, this teaching, this experience that we all have of just letting be, whether it's on the beach, taking a nap with your cat, with your lovebird, just being at rest, we tend to notice that something more exquisite comes forth than we otherwise might connect with. So at the very heart of the path is a deep intuition that this is the case, against much evidence to the contrary, no doubt. Some sense that there is something within us that we can, in fact, access, we can develop a relationship with, we can get to know it, we can make it stronger and more central in our lives. And we do this through a threefold process, at least this is how Buddhist traditions speak of it. We don't automatically sit on our cushion and drop into the most profound state of concentration and prayer after a day running through the maze of our lives. It takes cultivation. It takes practice, as we've already heard. It takes practice. It takes dailiness. So a few words about some of the processes that we go through as we cultivate meditation. It's very helpful. I can talk about 3 phases of learning, reflection, and meditation. So learning means learning something like the pages that Uncle X kindly handed out for us. It's very helpful learning about the basic structure or belief or themes in whatever tradition you are following, because that cognitive knowing will help hold you Why does it make sense? Why should I develop one-pointed concentration? I don't want to. Well, because it will help me settle down and give me access to something that is deeper me, deeper in my nature than I otherwise get access to. Or because I love God and I want to connect with the divine. And that can only happen if I rest a bit and give up some of my more negative ways of dispersing my energies. It's helpful if the practice that we're doing actually makes some kind of sense to us. It's one reason, I think, why there's so much interest nowadays in science and faith, or science and meditation. Meditation is actually good for you. A lot of science now, it actually boosts your immune system, it allows you to heal faster, your telomeric health, the telomeres that are indicative of many, many issues of health stay longer. They're getting shorter is a sign of deteriorating health. You read all about it. It's all over the internet. There are a lot of positive effects for meditation, of meditation on your body. So there's some learning that's important. Read some of the literature of your tradition. Read some literature about meditation. Then also there's the thinking about, what does this really mean to me? It gets a little more personal. Well, it means that I might have to reduce my TV time in the evening in order to make room for meditation. So that means I'm going to think a little bit about my values, my priorities. And when I remember this great love that I really do have for coming to know what is most exquisite, most divine, most encompassing in my universe, then okay, I'll turn off the TV a little earlier. And it's hard, because there are other things that we like a lot also. And then finally, of course, meditation itself. The love of what is possible for us can take us a long way in meditation. And this love expresses ourselves in meditation itself, expresses itself in the very act of attention. So I'm going to name 3 areas of meditation, some of which we've heard. There is the cultivation of attention, often called mindfulness, focusing, presence. All of these words mean we are attending, we are here. Paying attention is an act of love. How do you feel when somebody looks you in the eyes and settles down and just really listens to what you have to say? It feels incredibly good. It's healing. It's one reason friendships are healing. Somebody who will see us and talk to us and not be, on their phone or fidgeting, or you can see them thinking about their next activity. Somebody who will just listen, even if only for a minute. It's precious. So the cultivation of attention is an expression of love also for ourselves. You're going to be there with yourself. You're going to give yourself an inner vacation, and you're going to let go all of these threads that pull us in different directions from morning till night. What a relief. It's a gift. It's an expression of love. There's the cultivation of love itself for yourself. Taking care of yourself is actually very significant. And recognizing consciously how passionately you want what feels like it will bring you happiness is very, very important. It's not selfish to recognize how much you want happiness, because that tells you something about how everybody else in the room feels. There's a famous sutra from the early tradition of Buddhism in India. King and a queen, I often tell this, the king and a queen are walking together, and the king says, when I think of all the living beings throughout space, he's being very majestic, I realize that there is no one as dear to me as I am to myself. Not the romantic interlude you might have been expecting. But this is how meditators talk. We try to be honest. we try to look at our real feelings. And they're not always that pretty. They're not always politically correct. But we have to go in there and see what's actually there in order to move past it. You have to go through the breakers to get to the open ocean. You have to go through your own. Anyway, you get the idea. So the Queen says, you know, because we inspire, when I think about all the beings who are throughout space, I realize that not one of them is more dear to me than I am to myself. I can imagine them sort of looking at each other. Is this okay, what we've just said? Well, they go to Buddha. This is in Buddha's lifetime, according to the story. And Buddha says, you want to repeat it with me? These teachings were memorized. They weren't written down, so you always get a lot of repetition. But I think it's worth something. So Buddha says, the Buddha, the great archetype of being, compassion, wisdom, says, you know, when I think about all the living beings throughout space, which a Buddha is considered capable of doing, I realize that not one of them is more dear to me than I am to myself. But he doesn't stop there. And then he says, in just the same way are all beings dear to themselves. So this kind of brutal honesty becomes a bridge to actually connecting with others. In this sense, love of self, real love of self, which will also involve an interest, a passion actually, for exploring your deepest, most profound nature. Not what other people see when they look at you, when you're dressed up for display, not what you have to present at the office or in various kinds of social situations or even in intimate situations, but really, really this wonder of what you are. Longchenpa, 14th century great adept of Tibet, says, you know, we are all this nature that we have. It's a treasure house. How foolish could we be to fail to pay attention to it? So this love of ourselves that I'm talking about here is inclusive of this love of our real nature. And once, just like the beautiful story that we heard, once we start to realize that we have this tremendous capacity, everyone has it. Everyone has it. And once we recognize that, there's tremendous poignance in the suffering that we bring upon ourselves and each other. Great Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh famously said, and it's hard to hear in a way, it's hard for me to say even after all these years, he said, saying this in the midst of the Vietnam War, we must be compassionate for the victim and also for the rapist. He would say this to the boat people. One of my teachers, Goenka, would say, we must have compassion for the hunter as well as the deer. Now, map that onto some of the atrocities that we're hearing about in the news these days, that's not easy. But at least you can begin to see how poignant it would be to seeing that these people who are doing heinous things, without a doubt, on top of harming others, they're completely betraying and blind to their own capacity as a living being. And that's kind of poignant. It's sad. And from that poignance, that kind of softening, there can be a real compassion for those beings and for oneself, because we also do pretty rotten things from time to time. We can have compassion for ourselves. That compassion for self and for other begins to dissolve the distance between self and other, begins to dissolve this kind of objectivity or object relation or reification of you over there, me over here. I want everything in my pile. I don't care what's in your pile, but you know what? There's only one pile. And we start to see that. We start to see that. We are one world. Dalai Lama likes to say, and I love to hear that, you know, it might be that in the olden days you could kind of butcher your neighbor or the next country, pillage the next town, and you know, you'd get away with some wealth, and yeah, you might be better off. But the way the world is now, so small, so interdependent, everything that we do, our clothes are made in China, in Vietnam, in Brazil, everything affects everything. You cannot You cannot. War is old-fashioned. You know, we cannot devastate our neighbors on this planet without that devastation coming back to us. So compassion for oneself opens to compassion for others, which really, if we think about it, begins to dissolve the false boundaries that we create in our lives between self and other, good and bad, and opens to wisdom. So these three deeply interrelated aspects of attention, you've got to pay attention to see these things, attention, compassion for self and other, opening to wisdom. You see how ingredient love is in all of these. So that's what we practice. And when we practice, we can express this love by being kind to ourselves. And 3 words about that. What's important in actual meditation, which we will do, and while I'm talking, you can take a moment to find your posture. I just say 3 short guidelines for practice. All of them ways of expressing love, really, a love of the depths of what you are. One is relax. Now, this is going to be a very deeply supported relaxation, not a couch potato kind of relaxation, but we want to be easy. Relax. This is time to relax. Second, give up thinking that you can control how your meditation is going to come out. No, you cannot. You can't say, okay, I only want to have 100 thoughts per minute. You relax that also. Relax your kind of goal-oriented grasp on how it has to be. It doesn't have to be any particular way. And third, just be present to what does arise. That's also an act of love. So whatever happens is there. It doesn't have to be any one way. So if you find yourself scolding yourself for being too distracted or whatever, just remember your God word if you identified one a moment ago. Or just remember the principle here is just to learn to be and not to force yourself into some corner. So the way that we do that, as we have heard, body is very important. So we begin here too with establishing the body as a support for us, another act of kindness for yourself. So if you're seated in a chair, as before, feet flat on the floor if that's possible. If you meditate at home on a chair, find a way that you can sit uprightly. Something like a sprig of grass bursting out at springtime. It's just rising up out of your rib cage, as Lex said, but not in a forced way. So you're straight, but not stiff. And it can be very helpful to build a support awareness that you feel is actually coming to you. You're seated here with a lot of support. And that support actually comes to you from the center of the earth. The center of the earth, as it happens, is directly beneath you. Sometimes just reflecting on that, you might notice that there's some relaxation. That means there's a lot of support. The center of the earth is directly beneath you, and there is support for you in this moment coming from the very depths of the earth. And not only that, but the center of the earth is in perfect alignment with the bottom of your spine. This is a lot of support. The center of the earth in alignment with your spine is providing support for your entire body, your chair, this floor. So it might become possible as you sit today or over coming weeks, days and weeks, that you allow your chair or the floor beneath you to actually hold you. Usually we're straining a few more muscles to hold ourselves up than is actually necessary. You can allow yourself to be held, to be supported from the center of the earth, a deep, deep support for your chair, your body. And the center of the earth itself in direct alignment with the bottom of your spine. And that alignment continues through your navel, the center of your abdomen, the navel center, what you would experience as your center of gravity, a very deep place in the body. And this too is supported from the center of the earth. This alignment in your body is actually natural to the way your body actually wants to be. You're not artificially superimposing anything. With all of this support, your heart may also relax, because this alignment moves from your spine to the center of your abdomen, also through your heart center, not your physical heart, but the center of your upper body. A relaxed heart has the possibility of opening, being comfortable and easy. Feeling this support can bring ease to moments of emotional stress, because the body will translate this physical sense of support into a sense of emotional support, and we all need that. And the alignment continues past your throat, your crown, and even to the apex of space. So already you are part of a vast alignment from the center of the earth to the apex of space. You're supported. And gently place your attention on your breath. Just continue breathing in whatever way is most comfortable for you. Letting your attention gently rest on your breath. And simply be present to the sensation of your breath moving in with your inhalation, moving out with your exhalation. Whenever you notice that your attention has wandered elsewhere, you gently bring it back. So we'll just continue, sit here breathing together for a few minutes in silence. The exquisiteness of breathing, the refreshment it brings. Just feel that energy coming into your lungs. And the natural feeling of relaxation when you let it go. It's a miracle. The alignment of your body, the way you're sitting, means your breath has an easy path in and out. Remember, you can't control how your meditation will unfold. You simply are showing up for it. If your mind has wandered, you just bring it back. It's no big deal. If you like, you can imagine that some kind of luminosity of grace, is descending from above, gently entering your crown, moving through your body, dissolving any difficulties, light integrating with your being. And all of this occurs as you continue to be aware of your breath, your body lighting up. And in this way, the divine becomes visible in you. And you practice with a sense of being divine, luminous, and at the same time with enormous humility for our foibles as a human being. Continue with your breath for another minute. And very gently, with your next inhalation, let your attention rest at your heart. And sense all the positive energies, grace that is somehow present at your heart now, kindness, compassion for yourself, ready to segue into compassion for others. So we like to close the meditation with a sense of sharing our goodness, our good wishes with everyone in the room and everyone throughout space. So with a sense that the natural clarity of your mind is taking the form of a luminous orb of light at your heart. You don't have to try too hard to make it be there. It's just there if you like. And inside this luminous orb is a luminous letter, an ah. You can imagine it as an A. And we're going to sound the sound ah 3 times. Being very attentive to the sensation of sound and light and your own good wishes expanding from your heart to every cell in your body. The first ah. With the second ah, this luminosity carrying all of your blessings and good wishes goes to everyone in the room. By the end of the third ah, it expands out to the city, the world, and by the end of the third ah, it's as vast as space, and you're offering your good wishes for the happiness of all beings everywhere. So 2 more ahs.
Thank you so much, Anne. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask some questions. So I'm going to bring the chairs up here, and y'all can use the handheld mic, and we'll give you all the opportunity. I think the room's small enough to where we don't need to pass the mic out to the audience members, but if you could just speak up so everyone could hear, that would be really wonderful. And if you have someone in particular you're asking a question to, if you could let them know, and then, or you can ask a question to everyone, and that's fine too. To begin. Yeah.
You mentioned that the chanting works in a group, so can you explain why? Because it felt very powerful. Why is it only powerful in a group?
So the question is why, Lex mentioned earlier that chanting is effective in a group, and she's curious why that is.
Well, there's more energy, as we experienced. That's really the reason. If you have a group of people, there's just more juice put into the sound and the mantra. Now, having said that, people do practice mantras, as in transcendental meditation, by themselves. So, but if you have the opportunity to work in a group with a mantra, I think it's better.
Do either of you want to touch on, group chanting versus individual practice?
The normal resting heart rate is about 80 beats per minute. And so music is very soothing because it matches the heartbeat. That particular Tibetan singing bowl is 83 beats per minute. So part of it is physiological as to why music is that way. And chant in the Christian tradition was meant to bring you into that rested heart rate. It's physiological and spiritual.
There's also a sense of community that grows. We are all literally vibrating together, and that gives rise to a certain sense of support and fellowship.
Thanks. Go ahead.
It is about technique respiration. I know that we should focus on inhaling and exhaling as the basic physical part of meditation. But I've noticed that sometimes when I stop breathing and when I'm relaxed, when I'm 5 to 10 minutes into meditation, I stop breathing, and I get this very twinkish, this energy thing that fills my body. It feels very intense to the point that it's sort of like I need to wake up, make me shiver a little. Is that something wrong that would deter me from getting into a deeper state of meditation, or is that something positive, or should I not do that? Should I continue breathing all the time through the meditation?
So he's asking, sometimes when he's meditating, he gets this sort of full body, really intense kind of feeling, buzzing feeling. And is that indicative of a problem, or is there a way he's practicing that he could improve upon, or is that something that's normal? Or if you want to touch on that. So it has to do with breathing technique.
It's your technique.
Well, you'll remember to breathe. I mean, when you meditate, the breath does become shallow. The very thought, oh, I'm not breathing, is a thought that will start the breath again. So in yoga breathing, and I'll just tie it into the yoga tradition, the deeper you breathe, the slower the breath, and you actually breathe in 8 times the amount of oxygen per breath each breath, as compared to what's called inverted or upper chest breathing. So you actually extend your life. I'm not directing it to meditation, but just through complete yoga breathing, if you follow me through, you're taking fewer breaths, so you live longer. See, I'm actually 96. I just breathe slowly. I used to say I'm 66, but I really am, and it's not so fun anymore. So, but I do hear your question. The deeper you go into meditation, the more shallow the breath. But you will remember to breathe. So is it good, bad? It's just the way it is. Does that help at all?
Sort of. The question is, I can get to be very still, so still that I don't need to breathe, and it feels good, very intense, this twinkling feeling go up and down the body.
Nice.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Question about the long-term health outcome and the meditation. If you look at the lifespan of various meditation practitioners of different traditions, and if you compare with, say, the average lifespan of the Tibetan women, there are very few traditions that actually surpass that, the average of Tibetan women. So, just in terms of long-term outcome, are there any particular lineage, any particular tradition that are more promising than the average?
So he's asking for longevity. There's links between the longevity and contemplative practice or meditation. He's asking if there's any particular lineage that will make you live longer. Do any of you have anything to say about that?
Not really, but I just saw that study also. Somebody sent it to me, comparing the lifespan of Japanese women. There are, in Tibet, there are certain practices that are considered to be long life practices, and I don't know of any study, and not that many people do them. They're advanced practices. I don't know of any study that surveys how that pans out for the larger population. And, you know, important as the health outcomes are, and there's no question that it seems that certainly one's longevity could be extended simply because of reducing stress. And stress is a huge perpetrator of many other kinds of illness. But I'd just like to mention that if we go to the traditions themselves, at least I'll speak for the Buddhist tradition, its ultimate purpose is not to lengthen life. Its ultimate purpose is to really get the juice out of this life, which has to do with experiencing one's own nature and to get that richness, which isn't to say these two things are antithetical, but it is a different kind of emphasis. White Tara in the Indian and Buddhist traditions is associated with long life. Yeah.
Anyone else have a question? I know there's that one person that's dying to ask a question but is too shy to raise their hands. So now's the time.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. There you go. There's the guy.
I asked myself a question, then I answered. See, when we were practicing this prayerful practice in the Christian tradition, how many people felt that the time was shorter than it really was? Raise your hand. Welcome aboard.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. Oh, yeah, there we go. So it's a question about focusing on heart rate and heartbeat versus focusing on breathing, which is a really great question because both are pretty apparent when you're still. So, Lex.
You know, I think you should really be up here teaching this. It really doesn't matter. You're doing great. Yeah. So why did you come? Yes. So just one quick announcement. Those of you that are here that are collecting hours for either Yoga Alliance or the advanced training, I have certificates for you. So grab me before you walk out the door. Okay.
Yeah, we have another question.
Any of you experience, you know, you've been doing this so long, and you're teaching us how to do it, and it's probably second nature, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of part of the question. Do you ever find yourself in a situation at a place or with a person or alone or whatever, where you're not meaning to fall into this place that you're teaching us to go to, that you just find yourself in without much effort?
So this.
And much, like,
So this is a great question. For experienced practitioners of contemplative practice or meditation, the question is, do you ever find yourself sort of, is it easier to fall into that place that you do when you meditate? And do you find yourself sometimes not meaning to fall into the place when you're in a certain situation and then doing so? It's just a question about experience and meditation and how your practice will change with experience.
Certainly through practice, the qualities that one is cultivating become more available. So there are multiple qualities like compassion. So maybe instead of feeling furious that somebody has done such and such, I think, oh, so that quality of compassion may come a little more frequently than it used to. And depending on the tradition, I mean, in the Buddhist traditions, really, one is seeking to be always in that state. It's not a question of falling into it. One is seeking to be always in a state of presence, and that is not so easy. But that's very much the purpose. And, you know, it's humbling. You practice and practice and practice, and then things just draw you off, and then you laugh, and you go, oh, okay, so I'll go and practice some more. It's not it's a gentle curve, but definitely there's something more available for you over time in different lines of access, I would say.
I'll defer to my wife. I don't know. Nanoseconds in moments. Yeah. Some longer, some shorter.
Practice, but with practice, yes. I find myself at a stop sign with my foot on the brake and doing it for a minute between light changes. I do not do it at 60 miles an hour.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for coming. Before I hand it over to John for some final words, I just wanted to let you know that there are some materials at the back. Bob mentioned earlier that he has a book and a DVD that is available for purchase, and also Dr. Klein has provided us some materials, and especially there's an event being held at Dawn Mountain on the 21st of this month that's free that you can pick up a flyer for. And I'm sure any of these good people will be willing to answer further questions to you as you make your way home.
I wanted to tell you, I believe the most important single thing we can do right now in the United States is to reach out to people across borders, across religious traditions, across racial traditions. And what's happened here tonight, I think, is extremely important. Do y'all realize what has taken place? We begin to see ourselves as one. And I want to tell you, I thought it was rich having these three traditions presented so beautifully and richly, and yet they sounded like the same. Isn't that interesting? Where we used to think, we Christians would think, people in Eastern religion, oh my goodness. And they probably thought the same of us. But now I think we're at the point that we're beginning to see that if we're going to live together on this planet, we're going to have to break down these kind of barriers, and these kind of meetings are where that will happen. And I'm just so blessed that we're doing it here at the Institute. Would y'all please give a round of applause for Stuart Nelson, who has labored hard to make this happen, and it is from a deep passion in his heart. And what a blessing these three speakers have been to all of us. So please go in peace, to love one another, to love the Lord if you're in that tradition, but go in peace. Good night.